Hoolalali and welcome. It is Monday night. It's just after 8:30 and you're tuned into Love World Sat with me, your host Mark Joubert. Yes, Monday night means it's time to talk fight. All the big punchy kicky action from this weekend. And looking at tonight's show, we got huge conversations to take place. I'm sure most of you are talking about that fight. Yeah, you know the one I'm talking about, the rematch number 2. So we're going to talk a lot about that a little bit later. So just to give you a bit of an insight into what's coming up in tonight's show. We're talking Bellator 239 and 240. We're also talking UFC Fight Night 168. And yes, it's that one, number 2. It's Wilder versus Fury, the rematch. But I'm not going to be talking about it on my own because I think a fight of this epic proportion needs someone of just as much stature to talk me through that fight. And I'm talking about tonight's guest. Just a bit of information on our tonight's guest. He's got a record of 40 wins and only 14 defeats. He's the former WBA, WBO lightweight champion. He's the former WBC super middleweight champion. Many refer to him as the Rose of Soweto. Let me introduce my guest tonight, Dingaan Thobela. Dingaan, thank you so much for joining us tonight on Fight Sports Uncovered.
Thank you for having me.
Dingaan, so much has been happening. We've bumped into each other on a number of occasions at, let's call it local amateur events. Mm-hmm. But what have you been up to since you've put down your gloves?
Well, I'm into business now, which is the funeral business, Rose Funerals.
Yeah.
And I'm also nurturing the talent that, some of the youngsters who look up to me, who wants to take over from where we left. We take them and put them in the feeder and we get them going to identify their dreams.
Okay, so you're building hopefully the superstars of tomorrow.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. Well, looking at your career, I mean, that CV of yours is spectacular. But I suppose the first question for all of our viewers out there, what got you into the sport of boxing?
Well, I think I was just a kid with a pair of gloves that were too big for me.
Okay.
And, when I identified that, because I was on the defensive mode, some of our senior or elders, will be bullying us and all that. I think it all started there, having to defend myself. And,
Were you a particularly little kid in the group?
I was I was one of those kids that would be bullied. There's a norm in Soweto that some of the elders will be able to encourage you and say, you must run and be back within a jiffy and all that, So we couldn't really run and be back at the time unless you get a whip, So you have to defend yourself.
Getting into the sport, what then got that passion going for you? Because obviously just walking around with a pair of, like you said, oversized gloves is one thing.
Yeah.
But when the boxing bug bites, what happened from there? What was your progression into the amateurs and ultimately into professionals?
Yeah, as soon as I realized that I've got to defend myself, I started fighting back in the dusty streets of Soweto, and that's when I identified my potential, and it was easier for me to get into a boxing gym because my dad was a friend to my trainer, Norman Tlhabane, a man who took me to 2 times World Championship as we speak. So it was easier to get into the feeder, and I was taken through, and I'm glad that I excelled to the point that I was taken quickly to become 3 times World Champion.
That day, the 28th of June, 1986, obviously etched in your memory forever, but that was your professional debut.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What was it like as a youngster? Yes, you had an amateur career, but stepping up into the pro ranks for the first time, those big lights, what was that like?
See, because I came from that feeder, from the amateur ranks, and I knew what it takes to become a fighter. So it was much easier for me to gain that confidence. You know, when you jump into the ring, you always have that fear.
Yeah.
Even today, you know, if I have to jump into the gym, into the ring, I meant to say, I have fear. But that fear, once you touch gloves, then that fear disappears. Then you exercise what you have trained hard for.
So looking at that career of yours, 40 wins, 14 losses, you've been described, and I want to get this right, you've been described as the most naturally talented boxer ever to come out of South Africa.
Thank you.
I mean, that is one heck of an accolade.
Thank you. Thank you kindly.
Looking at your career, looking at what you've gone through, I mean, I think WBA, WBO lightweight champion, and then that WBC super middleweight strap that you also put on, you know, 3 times world champion, one heck of a career. And I mean, I'm discounting all the South African titles that you won along the way, but
Yes.
that's one heck of a career. You look back on that career now, some of the big moments for you?
Yeah, those were, you know, to winning the 3 world titles, you know, those were highlights, you know, of my boxing career, you know, having to, you know, I think as a young kid, I only dreamed to be a champion, and being a champion to be a South African champion. You know, when I climbed the ladder, having to get to fight those guys and win 3 world titles, is something that I can never forget, you know. And, you know, I'm happy that the support I got from all South Africans, that's the name Rose of Soweto comes from, because I started, the support base started from Soweto. Then it grew up, so I got the nickname from there, you know. And I think the whole South Africa today, you know, has to give me that support that has made me what I am today.
I think if you look at some of the boxing greats that have come out of South Africa, Philip Ndou, Brian Mitchell, Baby Jake, and obviously, okay, we're talking about the Rose of Soweto, has got to be lumped into that. But I think probably for me, one of the most amazing sort of scenes ever in South African boxing history has got to be back September 2000, 14 years after your debut as a professional.
Yes.
You're in a fight against a gentleman by the name of Glenn Catley, okay? And for the viewers out there, we're going to take a look at the closing moments of that fight. Here we're talking about Dingaan Thobela fighting for a world title against Glenn Catley back in September 2000. Let's take a look at this. Dingaan, I'd love you to talk us through some of what was probably going through your head at the time of this fight, right at the end here.
Right.
Let's take a look.
With the right to the head, then the left hook. Thobela looking for the opportunity to unload.
There you see that elbow coming up, Dingaan, and lifting that right uppercut, placing himself one more time, trying to find that opening. Another right uppercut, Dingaan landing. The right hand, he manages to slip through another
There you
right
are,
hand,
you
and I
got
think
caught.
that's the punch that did the damage that saw Catley going down.
So
Yes, that's
he
right.
goes
And
down,
look,
he immediately pulls
he got
himself up.
very quickly indeed, perhaps too fast.
Okay.
He should have taken advantage of that count.
The referee, yeah.
Look at that uppercut.
Oh, what a beautiful uppercut.
That must be
And
one of
those
the best
left, right.
uppercuts Thobela
Look
has
at that.
ever thrown.
Flash on
Another right
the
cross.
And there's another one
Yet another
on
one.
the bottom of the chin.
How on earth Catley managed to stay on his feet, goodness only knows.
And I think right there you must have known it was over.
Yeah, I could feel, you know, that he's going. And it was just 7 seconds to go at that time.
I mean, this is a long, hard fight. You must have been tired. Where do you dig up the last bits of energy to make sure that, hey, I've got to just finish this guy off?
It's a kick of a dying horse. You know, that's what happens when they talk about that line. They talk about those moments where you go all out and you realize that there's an opportunity, then you grab it with both hands.
So a massive, massive moment in your boxing career. Obviously, you walked away with the title. 3 months later, you were up against another gentleman by the name of Dave Hilton.
Yeah.
And that was to defend the title for the very first time. I mean,
Yes.
I find it strange. You were defending titles within 3 months. We look at many of the professionals today, they fight once a year and defend their titles once a year.
Yeah.
Do you see a massive shift in that in terms of your day, now fast forwarding some 20 odd years later?
Yeah, well, you know, it's one of those things that happens, sometimes negotiations, you know. Of course, they put a carrot, there's a carrot on your nose, and definitely you jump for that opportunity and say, I want it, you know. And well, that's what happened to Dave Hilton. Giving him the credit, he became the WBC World Champion.
And in that fight, you travelled to Montreal, Canada.
Yes, I was in Canada, and that's his hometown. So he had the crowd were all against me anyway. But I still say, I enjoyed myself, even though I lost my title. But I enjoyed everything about Canada. They welcomed me very well.
Big question for me is you were the champion. Traditionally, any challenger to the champion comes to the champion's hometown.
True.
You went to the challenger's hometown. Was that purely a money decision, or was that just to get Dingaan out of the country to go and fight and get that big international experience?
No, not just the money part of it. Of course, the money was the igniter, But I think just having to prove that I'm a worthy world champion, I can fight anywhere in the world, and I can defend my title, I can win anywhere in the world. Let's look at the first world title that I fought for. I fought outside the country. I fought in California when I fought Tony Lopez.
Yeah.
I fought in Mexico. So I was used to that kind of life, to go and defend my title or fight outside South Africa.
So you lost the title then by split decision.
Yes.
And then shortly thereafter, you took on Eric Lucas for the WBC super middleweight title.
Yes.
Okay, that was also that was a TKO loss.
Yeah, I lost on the stoppage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Mikkel Kessler, that was for the vacant IBA super middleweight title.
Yes, it's one of the toughest. Mikkel Kessler became one of the household name in the boxing world. So we fought for the IBA. So, but I lost it, and I'm glad that he thereafter he never looked back. He was excelling until he became world champion.
Absolutely. And for you, it was, can we call it almost the end of the road? Because from there on out, I think after that title win, and after that loss to Dave Hilton, it was another 6 losses. And then it was time to call it quits on your career, around about 2006, 2007. And then since then, you've taken up sort of this businessman role. You've taken up this mentor to some of the up-and-coming young boxers. But you've been someone that's always stayed very close to boxing in South Africa. I've seen you at a lot of amateur events, fight nights. Your thoughts on the state of boxing in South Africa and the current champions that we currently have in the country?
Yeah, I will never look back, onto boxing. Boxing has helped me to be what I am today. If I can be able to help and nurture a talent, I'll do so, which I am doing. I'm doing it in the country, I'm doing it internationally, I'm doing it in the SADC. We've got a good relationship with Namibia. Namibia, we got a lot of world champions that look up to me, and they became world champion. The current state of boxing in South Africa right now is not too good. It has dropped tremendously, but we are busy working on it, trying to talk to everyone. When I say everyone, fight fans, corporate world, television, fighters, trainers, managers, sponsors. We're talking to everyone to try and ignite that interest to be able to take boxing to where it belonged.
And in terms of the current crop of champions, South Africa at the moment has only 4 champions, 3 of which are IBO champions. One is a WBC champion in terms of Maruti Mtlani. Your thoughts on the debate that's raging internationally around the various titles? WBA, WBC, IBO, etc., IBF. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, we all know the top world body organization, it's the WBA, WBC, IBF, and WBO. All the other ones comes, later in the stage. And those world champions, some of those South African world champions, which are IBO, great champion, Kevin Lerena, look at him, he's doing a great job.
Absolutely.
And we can talk of Maruti Mtalane, we're talking of Solani Tete.
Gideon
Butelezi, can name a few. They're doing a great job to keep, to keep us afloat, to know that South Africa has once produced just about 16, 18 world champions at the time. So we want to bring that back to say there are fighters who can be able to challenge against the world's best.
That's the goal, absolutely, and we all want that goal to take place. But the big thing is that if I were to go out there and look for any upcoming amateur boxing events. Wow. It's very difficult to find where amateur boxing events are taking place, where we as fans of the sport can watch and see who the next big amateur is that hopefully will turn pro soon.
Well, you're right. That's what I'm saying. We have to ignite that interest back. People have turned back on boxing based on all sorts of challenges. We need everyone. BSA, who is the regulatory body, will be talking to them and try and bring angles to try and have to ignite, get people, to bring those glory days, When you talk of, Vianney Bungu, when you talk of Baby Jake Matlala, myself, Brian Mitchell,
Philip
Ndou, you used to know that there's boxing every weekend.
Yeah.
And people will be on their toes, having to watch television, be glued on television, watching those bouts. So we're trying to bring back that memo, those times.
Absolutely. And if we look at what's coming up, I find it very difficult to understand that the only sort of place that we can go and see young boxers happens to be white-collar events.
Oh yes, because boxing is not afloat. Thus you find all this other sporting code, mushrooming, and of course the mushroom and take over from boxing. But we're not gonna pin them down. We say fine, they're helping. It's combat sport. It's all combat. It's called combat sport. So we'll try and help also boxing to be able to go back to where it belongs. People love boxing. They will be waking up. I mean, just imagine people waking up 3 a.m. to be watching Dingaan Thobela fighting overseas.
Absolutely.
Those days we want to bring them back.
Talking about mushrooming, MMA has been huge for boxing. I mean, obviously, we all agree that boxing died a death after Mike Tyson left, and a lot of our South African champs had to retire, in terms of getting to the end of their careers. But MMA has brought boxing back. We see the heavyweight division, and we'll talk a lot about that a little bit later in the show. The world heavyweight division is on fire at the moment. This fight this weekend, Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder, is proof of that. And we'll talk about some of those stats. But boxing is growing again. Floyd Mayweather talking about coming back again. We've got Manny Pacquiao now becoming the only boxer ever to have won titles across 4 decades. I mean, boxing is seriously back. And do you think that MMA has had a major role in helping to rejuvenate the sport?
Well, I think so, because it kept the moment, going. You had MMA, you have UFC. They really kept, the combat sport, being alive, even though boxing was not that much. But MMA, UFC came in, and kept people having to watch and attend those events. So it will be great to see boxing coming back and joining the force. Are
you waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning to watch MMA?
Yes, I do. I also not just wake up. I'm always at MMA, at UFC tournaments. I love that. I think sometimes my adrenaline keeps pumping, and I said, I can be that one. I can do that one. But it's all wishful thinking. I've come to a stop. I'm no longer an active fighter. I'm more of administrator, managing fighters. Help them to train them, show them the skill of the art of pugilism.
Well, that's awesome. If you've just joined us, you're watching the Fight Sports Uncovered show with me, Mark Joubert, and my guest tonight, none other than the Rose of Soweto, 3 times world champion Dingaan Thobela. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to wrap up on some of this weekend's top punch kicky action. We'll see you right after this.
It is a busy day ahead. Don't let that busyness stop you from staying on top of what is happening around the world. Get all your politics, your business, and all your sports, and get connected to what the Church of Jesus Christ is doing all around the world. AM Live on Level Set every weekday from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Get a boost on AM Live.
Africa is a continent of movers and shakers, young emerging entrepreneurs who are shaping a new Africa, entrepreneurs and decision makers who are contributing massively to nation building. Entrepreneurs are vitally important for every economy and for the social development of every country. Join me, Innocent Semosa, on this insightful journey as I profile different entrepreneurs from the street to the boardroom, right here on your favorite station, Love World Set.
Welcome back. It's Fight Sports Uncovered with me, your host Mark Joubert, exclusive here at Love World Sat. And if you missed out on a first segment, you'll have missed out on a fantastic update from the Rosa Soweto. My guest tonight, Dingaan Thobela, giving us a bit of a background into how he got into the sport, what it was like, and that absolutely fascinating last couple of moments of that title-winning knockout against Glenn Catley. But right now, we're going to quickly wrap up some of this weekend's top Fight Sports action. And we're going to kick off first with a little bit of news. And it's a sport that we haven't touched on yet here on Fight Sports Uncovered. But it's a sport that I think many of you sort of have a fascination with, especially when you do see it. And it's the sport of sumo wrestling. And for many of you MMA stars, you're used to seeing them in a cage. Almost wire fences, everything surrounding them. Cage door gets shut, there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. We're going to talk about MMA because it most certainly is not for the faint of heart. And take a look at this clip of two MMA athletes that participated in a sumo tournament this weekend. It was the Substars grappling tournament that was held in Miami, Florida. The two MMA athletes I am talking about are none other than Rampage Jackson and Curtis Blades, the Razor Blades. And these guys put on a little bit of a demonstration when it came to sumo wrestling. So let's have a look at this clip and we'll talk you through some of the action that took place here. Here we see an exhibition match taking place between Curtis Blades, man on the right there, UFC fighter, and he's taking on Japanese national university champion Takashi Amitani. Now we've got a veteran of the sport taking on a veteran of MMA, and as you saw there, Amitani quite easily taking Curtis Blades out of the circle. And for those of you that don't quite know the rules of sumo wrestling, it's actually kind of simple. It's a competitive full contact wrestling sport where the aim of the sport is to literally get you out of that circle that's wearing green, to get some part of your body on the ground other than the soles of your feet. And once again, it becomes that simple. And a lot of tradition in the sport, as you can see, a lot of bending over, a lot of slapping of the thighs, and then it's the forward thrust. All of these have fantastic Japanese names of which I have absolutely no idea, but we are going to talk a lot more about this in shows to come. And here you see it's all literally about pure brute strength, and there you see Curtis Blades being pushed out of the circle yet again, and ultimately that results in a loss for Curtis Blades. So this is the sport of sumo wrestling. And a couple of interesting facts that I can tell you about the sport of sumo wrestling, and I'll come to those now, because right now what you're about to see is Rampage Jackson. He's about to come into the circle, and he is taking on probably the heaviest sumo champion in the world. Okay, Yamamoto Yana. Okay, this guy is, like I said, the heaviest sumo champion in the world. His weight comes in at around about 600 pounds. For those that are wanting to understand that in kilograms, that's about 270 kilos, and you can see by the size of him, he's a big guy, and he's taking on Rampage Jackson, who is notorious for some very brutal knockouts in both Pride days as well as in the UFC and Bellator. So here we're seeing they're building up to this rumble, if we can call it that, in sumo. And like I said, Jackson about to take on one of the heaviest sumo wrestlers in the world. Let's listen to some of the sound clips. And there you see a very quick victory for Yamamoto Yama, literally picking up Jackson and just gently placing him outside of the ring for that victory. But some fun had there by all. A couple of interesting facts around sumo. There are only really 6 sumo tournaments held every single year. There are no weight classes when it comes to sumo, and as you can quite then nicely believe is that it leads to some very interesting matchups between some of the really large guys and some not so large guys. And the highest ranked sumo wrestlers are called yokozunas, and there you saw the biggest of them all, Yamamoto Yama, weighing in at some 600 pounds, some 270 kilograms. So I'm going to ask Dingaan Thobela, are you next to get into the sumo ring?
Well, it's just about, I think if you look at my history, I've been struggling to make weight, super middleweight, lightweight, and all that. So I thought I might as well, go to the sumo wrestling,
That would have been an interesting one to see the Rose of Soweto in a sumo ring, pushing against some of those really, really big guys.
Oh yeah, I would have loved to, but probably I couldn't balloon to that level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, moving on to some of the weekend's big results, and I think first off, let's jump and dive straight into the Bellator action. And Bellator 239, we're going to take a look at some of these highlights. Right, Moldovsky versus Ayala in that heavyweight clash. Moldovsky with the big takedowns and some ground and pound, and that really was all he needed to walk away with the win there. As you can see, a very easy win. He doesn't look like he's had too much of a workout, where his opponent, he was thrown all over the place. Right in this next one, Johnson up against Fortune, and don't look away. This was very quick. Bam. Big right hand, out for the count, and Tyrell Fortune out, with Johnson taking the big knockout win there. Next up, we had Brandon Gertz up against Miles Jury, and Brandon Gertz looking like much of the aggressor for most of the fight, bringing the fight through to Miles Jury throughout the fight. A bit of exchanging as well taking place from Miles Jury But in the end of it all, it comes down to the judges. And like they say in fights, and Dingaan, I'm sure you would agree, never leave it to the judges. And despite all of the attention from Gertz, it was Jury that came away with the win. Then in that main event, Ed Ruth up against the undefeated Yaroslav Amosov. It was a tough back and forth fight, but at the end of the day, I think Amosov just had too much for Ed Ruth. And you'll see here, doesn't matter what Ed Ruth brought to the party, it just, Yaroslav Amosov just seemed to have an answer for everything that Ed Ruth brought. Amosov looking as often as possible to take Ruth to the ground, and no matter what Ruth tried to do, it was just so simple for Amosov. He was almost shaking him off at will. There you go. And yes, the undefeated Amosov continues, and I think that's up to 23-0 now in his career. So yeah, those vigils courtesy of Bellator. That was Bellator 239. But as we built up on Thursday night, we told you that Bellator have started this unique thing where they almost own the weekend. And that first event's taking place almost 4,500 miles apart. The next event was Bellator 240 taking place in Dublin, Ireland. And the headline event there for that event was, there were a couple of fights there, but I think the big one for me was that much anticipated bantamweight clash that was between Ricky Bandejas and a local boy, a South African guy. And unfortunately for Frans Mlambo, it was the second time that Ricky Bandejas had picked up an SBG scalp, knocking out Frans Mlambo in the second round. So Frans Mlambo walks away with another defeat there, a big win for Bandejas, and he's now talking about title aspirations. We'll wait and see how that goes. Moving to that headline event, Brent Primus up against Chris Bungard, and it was the second round submission with that crossface, and it was all over. Brent Primus setting himself up to hopefully get back into title contention and get back up in there and hopefully fight for the title once again. And then there was the Bellator Dublin card. And on that card, we spoke about Lee McCourt. She was looking to hopefully get a good result here and maybe get a shot at Cyborg's title. And it was a great performance from her. She used her grappling skills and earned a unanimous decision victory over promotion newcomer Judith Ruiz there in, that was Bellator Dublin for you. Then we moved on to UFC Fight Night 168. The big fight there. There was only really one fight to talk about in that card, and that was that lightweight clash between Felder and Hooker. These guys really didn't like each other going into the fight, and after 5 grueling rounds, it was a split decision win to Hooker. Many were thinking that the partisan crowd played a role in swaying the judges. Many people were talking about that after the fight, but no one's talking about robbery. After the fight, we're looking at Felder possibly talking about retiring. Not too sure if that's going to take place. Maybe just emotions at the end of a fight. So we'll wait and see what happens in a couple of weeks' time. See if Felder is still in mind to want to hang up his gloves. But at this point, I want to bring Dingaan Thobela back in here. Dingaan, fighting, it's a great sport. When you're on the high, it's fantastic. You're there, you're in the ring, you're in the cage, if talking about MMA and kickboxing and the likes of Glory. When you're winning, you're in there with your team. When you're losing, you almost feel like you're in there on your own.
Yeah, it happens to all of us in boxing also, not only your trainers, your teammates and all that, even fight fans, your family and all that, because they want to see you on the winning trend, and you got to maintain that. But we all know that sometimes you lose, sometimes you win, and some people get to turn their back, and but you gotta have to pick up from everything, and make sure that you can do it again and again and again. Muhammad Ali is one of those greatest fighters that I look up to, and he kept coming back. He never lost hope.
Once you've gone through a big defeat, the team around you, how important is the team around you to build that morale up? Because obviously you've put in the training, you've put in the work, you've done your research, you think you've got the strategy, you think you've got the game plan to win the fight.
Yeah.
You lose. That's obviously a knock not only on you as the fighter, but it's a knock on the team as well, because clearly either the strategy didn't work or the other team just had a better strategy.
True.
How tough is it for you as the athlete as well as your team to lift themselves up for that next fight?
Well, it's not easy, but you need a support base, from your family, from your trainer, from your teammates, from everyone who has helped you to be able to build that confidence to take up the challenge. Sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. But as fighters, we always get up and go get it. We do it again and again and again.
And is it incumbent on you as the fighter to find that spirit to keep on going back? Because I would think the very first time you step into the gym after a big loss, it's got to be a tough one.
True. It has to start from you, or with you, to be able to say, I can do it again. You get up and dust yourself, and you relax a little bit, you take a big rest, and then you get back again into the gym. The trainer will see all the changes and start having confidence again and say you can get engaged into another bout again.
As the mentor that you are to a lot of young up-and-coming potential superstars of the future, what is your advice to these youngsters that go into a fight, come away with a bad loss?
Yeah.
Someone like you, you've been there, you've done it, you've got 3 world titles behind your name. What's the kind of advice you give to a youngster that's just had a really bad day at the office?
Well, the first advice is to tell them that nothing is impossible. The second one is go get it. They say good things come to those who wait, which I don't believe much. I believe in good things come to those who go get them.
And to work hard.
That's what it is.
And is it building up to these fights, coming off of a loss, a lot more work goes into the mental aspect of the game as opposed to just the physical, the fists, the strategy, the punch work, the bag work, the sparring. How much mental preparation do you give to these youngsters as part of their training towards fighting?
Well, there's a lot of mental preparation, more than even the physical, because training is the norm. Getting up in the morning, getting into the gym, training with the fighters. But mental preparation, needs somebody who can hypnotize you, sit with you, tell you how important it is to win this kind of a match. What it will do, it will change your life, it will make you a better person or something. You need somebody to hypnotize, which I see a lot of athletes. We don't get to that part. We just think physical preparation is the only key to it, but no. Even the mental one, you need to sit back and say, I've trained hard, I'm ready physically, practically and otherwise, but mentally I'm not. Because what happens, you get lots of fighters go into a big center stage. The stage becomes bigger for them because psychologically they're not prepared. You
saw that vicious knockout in Bellator.
Yes.
When you look at a fighter that's lost by decision, close decision or unanimous decision, or a fighter that's lost by knockout, very different approach that you've got to take to each of those athletes.
Yeah, true, I know. But of course, we always have to support base plays a pivotal role. Support base, whether you lost by knockout, you lost on points, you need people around you that will come in and say, could have, should have, let's do that. The next time, let's go back to the gym, correct. If you accept those lines, let's go back to the gym and correct. You are an athlete. It means you're going to be able to go do it again. Great fighters, they do that. That's why you see rematch clause, flowing around from time to time, because they know that it's a win or lose. You could, slip and lose a fight that you thought, this one I'm going to just win, at any event. But if they talk about ifs, if you lose and all that, a rematch clause. Promoters who comes in, business guys, they're smart to be able to come up with those written fight clause.
Looking at the youth of today, of which you're a mentor, how many of those youngsters are willing to take the advice from someone like yourself that's been there?
Well, there are a lot of them that are willing to do that. We just have to go closer to them and get to show them that in life, they can be able to go get it and they can be able to do anything that they wish and want to be. We when I say we, it's myself and the other ex-world champions, South African champions and all that.
Yeah.
I would say ex-champions. We're trying to put our eggs together to say, let's help these youngsters who looked up to us to be able to take over from where we left.
Interesting point that you make there, because if I look at a lot of other of our big sports, rugby's, crickets, football, etc., you have a lot of the ex-legends that still spend a lot of time back in the sport, back in the sport. There's a lot of legends that don't. They leave the sport and they go off and they do their own thing. Do we have lots of our boxing legends still very deeply involved in the sport?
No, not quite. But this is what we are working on, to make sure that there's this line that says has been.
Yes.
It doesn't have to exist in the real true sense, but it is there. But we should take those fighters, those ex-former fighters or former legends and all that. Well, they're legends. They're called legends at the end of the day. They should be taken and say, you become a manager, you become a trainer, you become a motivationer, come and do something in the sporting coach, whether boxing, MMA, UFC, and the likes. We have to get them and help them to nurture the talent to make it grow.
But that can only happen when there's money to pay them to fulfill that role.
It's true. It all comes based on money, because you need to travel, you need to do this and that to be able to make sure that you do a good job in nurturing this talent. Therefore, as I said, we don't leave everybody. Corporate world comes in handy there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you're part of the corporate world, you've heard it from a former 3-time world champion. Get involved. Help the sport grow. There are so many opportunities, not only in boxing, in MMA, in Taekwondo, in Muay Thai, in all the combat sports around South Africa, to get deeply involved and to help our youth find something, find a little niche for themselves and potentially become a future world champion. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, it's the big one. We're going to talk all about Wilder versus Fury 2 with my guest, Dingaan Thobela. We'll see you after this.
Get faith-inspiring testimonies for living in divine health from the Healing School magazine. It's free of charge and easy to download. Just log on to www.enterthehealingschool.org/magazine. Fill in your name and email address. Download now.
It is a busy day ahead. Don't let that busyness stop you from staying on top of what is happening around the world. Get all your politics, your business, and all your sports, and get connected to what the Church of Jesus Christ is doing all around the world. AM Live on Level Set every weekday from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Get a boost on AM Live.
Welcome back, Fight Sports Uncovered, probably brought to you by Bare Knuckle. And yes, it's that time, because I would love to have just started off by saying, and then there was one, because that's essentially what it boils down. The most eagerly anticipated heavyweight rematch in recent years took place this weekend, and what I'm talking about now is Wilder Fury 2. You'll recall going back to late 2018, that disastrous fight, when it was declared a draw. For whatever reason, I don't know, but it was a draw. It led to what happened this weekend. And looking back at that fight, all I can say is that Tyson Fury absolutely bullied Deontay Wilder for a good 7 rounds before eventually his corner had seen enough and threw in the towel. So, Dingaan Thobela, I mean, we look at that fight. Your initial thoughts on watching that fight. You saw the first fight. You saw how, can we call it fairly even, that fight was between the two athletes. Yes. Now you saw this. It was literally a one-sided affair.
Oh yes, I think the Tyson Fury of the last fight was different to the Tyson Fury of this fight, you know. You said he was bullied and all that, you know. I used the line, he was roughed up.
Absolutely.
You know, the Tyson Fury said, I'm going to go rough him up. And he did not give him any respect, you know. I think they've studied the previous fight and they thought we can push the man, we can, go get it and we can knock him out. That's why, thus he even said it in advance that I would predict a knockout in the second round. And he knew that he can outweigh him and outpunch him and knock him out.
Going into the fight, there was a lot of talk about Tyson Fury coming in a lot heavier than he's fought before. He definitely looked much heavier, much bigger than Deontay Wilder going into the fight on fight night. That, I think, played a massive role in the fight. We got a bit of footage, the final, sort of the highlights of the final couple of rounds that we want to show you. And then, Dingaan, I'd love to get your thoughts on how you see this whole thing unpacking, particularly looking at Deontay Wilder. He looked a beaten up fighter come close to the end of this fight. Let's have a look at some of this footage.
Deontay does not look stable on his feet. He looks a bit tired. He hasn't caught that second wind yet.
Look at this rally to close out the round. All Fury every which way. Just dominant.
And here Fury comes in again. And he's looking for the spot. Hits him to the body. Deontay was off balance.
So we look at that fight. Up until now, this is now the second time that Deontay Wilder has been dropped in the fight. Also, I mean, you mentioned that Tyson Fury came in here a very different person. I look at it the other side. Deontay Wilder was also a very different fighter. It's almost like he wasn't allowed to get into his game plan. He was just continuously kept off balance.
Oh yes, he was never given them a chance to be able to start thinking, you know. They knew that he's a thinking fighter. If you give him the time, he will be able to think and outbox you. So they never wanted to give him the chance. They said we'll take the fight to him. From the first round, they went on, look at those combination bombs, you know, outweigh him. Look at how we out wrestled him and all that. He pushed him. He was not giving him a chance. Any moment he finds, he will do it, out wrestling him, you know, outweighing him, you know, jumping all over him, throwing him with power punches.
It's almost like he was not scared of Deontay Wilder unleashing that big right hand.
Yeah, well, you know, I think he knew. Well, the other thing that Deontay Wilder said he cannot punch. So he wanted to prove that he can punch. That's why he kept with those accumulation of big punches.
And just looking and comparing it to the first fight, the Tyson Fury that came in this weekend, he seemed to want to put together combinations. He stuck that jab out, he made that jab count, and he followed up that jab with that cross right, and he continuously did that.
Most definitely. They never gave him a chance to be able to think. They know he's a tactic fighter, you know, and if you give him a chance to think, he will be able to outbox you. But they never gave him the chance. They went to rough him up.
A lot of clinching taking place at this point, and I mean, you got to feel for the referee here. The referee's having to get stuck in between these two big guys, continuously separating them. I mean, how difficult is the job for the referee right about now?
The referee's job was difficult here because he could tell that the man was getting hit. At some point, he was looking at Deontay Wilder in his eyes to see if he's okay. Are you okay? Are you fine? He kept on asking that. At the end of it, he jumped in and says, you know what, no more.
I think we're coming up to a point now where I mean, here we go. I think the ref is obviously looking, like you say, you can actually see him looking at Deontay Wilder. He's actually almost focused on Deontay Wilder right now in the fight. He's not even looking at Tyson Fury. He knows that Fury's got the fight in control. He knows what he's doing. Deontay Wilder is on the back pedal. He is constantly moving backwards. Fury doing a lot of feinting before he sets up those punches.
Yeah, you can see it was really power punches. You know, he was throwing punches. He was not just flipping and all that. He would throw big punches because he realized that Deontay Wilder is hurt. You know, each and every punch that touches him, you see Deontay's feet, you know, they wobble a little bit. So thus they said, we're going to take the fight to him. We're not going to give him any space to breathe.
Right, so here we're coming into, I think this is the final round, seventh and final round of the fight. And Deontay Wilder once again backpedaling the whole time. Clearly hurt.
Yeah, it hurts. You know, I think his ear also contributed because it was burst. You know, and there's no way that you know, Deontay Wilder would have come back and fight, because you can see that he's trying. He's on the back foot all the time. He's just taking punches. He's even scared. He fears even to throw a punch because he knows that he will be countered by a big bone.
I mean, 42 fights, 42 wins to Deontay Wilder's credit, and I don't recall seeing him backpedal as much in a fight like he's backpedaling here.
No, you know, he was not there. He was not in the fight at all, and I think that it all started in the first round. And when they started giving him those power shots and all that, he felt them. So he was on the back foot all the time to be able to say, let me survive. You know, he was fighting on the survivor mode.
And here again, let's talk about the referee having to get stuck in here now, trying to separate the two guys. I mean,
and those are big guys, you know.
Yeah.
The referee have to separate. Look at him. He's watching it really very closely because he realized that Deontay Wilder got hurt, you know. So that's why Daz is getting closer and want to see if he's going to give him the chance. Look at him.
And here we go.
He jumped in and says, you know
Here
what, no, he's going to call it a day. And Deontay Wilder was not happy with that.
Absolutely not happy with that. But before we get to the incident that resulted in the end of the fight, the big talking point in the fight is the 1 point deduction that took place to Tyson Fury.
Mm-hmm.
How significant is that to you as a fighter in the moment?
Well, the referee, you know, they've got their moment there where they see. But if you look at before that moment, the referee has been warning them, you know, warning Tyson Fury at some stage. But he kept doing it again.
Kept on grabbing the head.
Yes, you know, so he kept doing it. So thus he said, I've got to have to take out the point, you know, because he's not listening. When the first round, when he started the fight, he told them that he must listen to him and they must obey his command. So along the line, if they don't obey their command, he's got to make a decision.
At the end of the day, that 1 point meant nothing because Tyson Fury walked away with the win. But the win, in a way, once again, let me reiterate, Deontay Wilder 42-0, and his corner throws in the towel.
Yes, that was a weird one, you know.
Very weird.
Yeah, that's even Deontay Wilder. He went straight to his trainer. Why are you stopping the fight? You can hear him saying that. You look at his lips and all that. You read his lips. Why? They said your ear. You were getting hurt. The trainer, he's a very well-experienced trainer. By the way, he's a former fighter. That's Mark Brilliant. He knows exactly what it takes to be in the ring.
As I said, Fury took the fight to Deontay Wilder. Would it be a fair assessment to say that Tyson Fury became a puncher this last Saturday night?
Oh yes, they said he couldn't punch, he couldn't do anything, he couldn't hit a fly. Look at what he did to Deontay. You know, he was pounding him all the way. You know, so but anyway, let's look at promoters are smart. They make this fight happen, you know, again and again. Now there is a return fight clause that's in place. You know, let me take you back a little bit to a fight where Andy Ruiz fought Anthony Joshua.
Yes.
The same thing happened where there was a return fight clause. So let's say and hope that the return fight clause will be exercised and see that if Deontay comes back, what will happen. But, you know, looking at the punishment index also, it will contribute with the decision making.
Looking at that fight, do you believe there should be a third fight?
Well, we'll see the same thing. But, you know, if they have to exercise the return fight clause, it's very important. Thus the promoters wants it. And it has helped Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua was knocked out. We never thought Anthony Joshua will come back and win. Now, Anthony Joshua, because of the return fight laws, look at him. He's now a champion again. Yeah. So let's see what happens with the negotiation.
So we've got the contractually signed rematch that's now got to take place. What is it called? A rematch?
Yes.
Okay, that's got to take place now. But surely the big fight now in the heavyweight division is Tyson Fury against Anthony Joshua.
Most definitely. We need that fight, And it's great. I mean, Eddie Hearns, I heard him saying it will be good. It will never happen if we miss this opportunity of putting a deal together and make sure that we get Anthony Joshua fighting Tyson Fury. It's an all British affair. It will never happen again in the heavyweight division. So I wish them luck, personally. I wish them luck that they can be able to clinch that deal. The only snag will be if Deontay Wilder want to exercise his return fight clause, then it will delay the whole thing.
Looking at that fight and looking at some of the stats that I've got down here, you're looking at Wilder. He was knocked down twice and landing 58 power punches on 160 shots thrown, and that's Tyson Fury. And then Wilder only landing 18 shots out of 55 power punches thrown. Definitely indicative of a very one-sided fight there towards the now new WBC champion. During the broadcast of that fight, it was also announced that the event was set to break a record. And that record I'm talking about is the Nevada Gate revenue record. Previous record stood at $16.86 million US. And that has been there since 1999, and that was the Evander Holyfield versus Lennox Lewis heavyweight bout. This fight that you just watched now, that you witnessed this weekend, has now set the new record. The new record sits at 16.92 million. Now, if we understand how many people sat in the arena, a mere 15,816 fans sat in that arena. That boils down to just over $1,070 per ticket. Wow, that's expensive.
Oh yeah, that's expensive, But for a good fight of that magnitude, it's great.
The all-time record is held by Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao. That was the fight back in 2015, and that fight's gate attendance, a massive $72.2 million. I don't know if that's ever going to be beaten, but wow, that is a massive amount of money to be made at a fight gate. Well, Dingaan Thobela, the Rose of Soweto, thank you so much for your time on the show. So much insight. I hope this is not going to be the first and last time we see you on the show. So much to talk about, so much insight, so much information that I'm sure is sitting in your head that you can bring to many of our viewers.
Most definitely. Thanks for inviting me, and I'm glad that I contributed in having to make sure that, especially that fight, all credit must go to Tyson Fury.
Absolutely, and thanks to you, the viewers, for watching tonight's show, Fight Sports Uncovered. We've run out of time. Like I said, big thank you to our special guest today, Dingaan Thobela. Also, big thanks to Butler and the team in the back there. Thanks so much for all the work you guys put in before the show and right throughout the show. As always, you can get hold of us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or you can just send us your comments on King's Chat. We'd love to hear what you have to say about the show. And until Thursday night, protect yourselves at all times. We're out.